What is up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show for you tonight. It is October 20th, Monday evening. We have a fun doubleheader on our hands: Detroit, Tampa Bay, and then Seattle, Houston. I'm officially back from vacation. I apologize for my bye week in week 7 and there's not being available at the end of week 6. But we are full go back into the swing of things. We're going to continue like nothing has happened. So tonight we'll do this post-game notes. Tomorrow, Tuesday night, we'll do the waiver wire show. Wednesday evening, live show. Thursday night, live show. And then we're back into the swing of things. So I did update a bunch of stuff on the fantasyfellowship.com today for members. You guys can check that stuff out. But this video, I'm just going to go over the 13 games that happened Thursday and Sunday. And that Steelers-Bengals game. How about this? So the Steelers, they come in. They were a hot team, and they kind of got routed here. Joe Flacco in the Browns or the Bengals offense, they could not contain them. So what did we learn from the Steelers here? Rodgers continues to look fine, 22.56 points. I think he threw 4 touchdowns. He looked really good throwing the ball to his tight ends. Both Jonnu, Pat, and even Darnell Washington is continuing to get in the mix here. I don't really have a lot of trust in these tight ends week to week, but I think right now, especially in week 8 with this big bye week we have, I think 6 teams are going to be on bye. If you need a tight end, Jonnu and Pat Freiermuth are guys that could be thrown out there in hopes for a touchdown or a big game. Pat Freiermuth looked awesome too, just running the ball wide open some plays. So the tight ends are back in play. DK Metcalf, not his best day. 6 targets on the night, 3 receptions, 8 fantasy points. That's the DK floor game that we've known from the last few years. Roman Wilson was the wide receiver too. Maybe we start to see him get more involved, but we have to watch the health of Calvin Austin. But I think for fantasy purposes, we're not really caring about who the wide receiver 2 is for Pittsburgh. And then the running backs, man. I was really curious to see what this would look like. Of course, Kenneth Gainwell had the big game in Ireland. I think back in week 5, they were on a bye in week 6, so we weren't really quite sure how this backfield was going to look. But it was the Jaylen Warren show. They kind of split snaps and routes pretty close to each other, but Jaylen Warren gets 16 carries, 3 for Kenneth Gainwell. So Jaylen Warren, bell cow back. He gets 20 touches in this game. So very, very good sign there for our guy, Jaylen Warren. We got Jesse GM here on the Twitch. There's usually 1 or 2 Twitch stragglers per stream, but good evening to Jesse GM. But yeah, the Steelers didn't really learn a lot too much here. I think the tight ends were the big development here that they could be used if you need a tight end this week. And then Jaylen Warren, man, he looks like maybe not quite a top 12 running back 1 status, but he's a locked and loaded strong RB2 going forward. And then just hold on to Kenneth Gainwell. He's going to continue to be valuable at some point. And then the Cincinnati Bengals with Joseph Flacco here. He finally gets it going. He looked okay in that first game against Green Bay, but here we really see him step into a really nice spot. Joe Flacco, 26 fantasy points. He even had 5 rushing attempts in this one. He was really feeling it. And then we finally got some Chase Brown action. Now, I will note that Samaje Perine did get more work, a lot more snaps, routes, and rushing attempts than we've seen him get so far this season. But Chase Brown looked good on his 11 carries. He also had the 2 receptions. So keep starting Chase Brown. And I think I saw somewhere that the Bengals have the easiest schedule remaining for running backs. So maybe Flacco opens this up a little bit and allows more room, as defenses kind of have to respect Flacco throwing the ball now. So maybe Chase Brown gets a little bit more opportunities to get some fantasy points. So good news there. Samaje Perine could be picked up as a handcuff type running back. I don't really need to say much about Jamar Chase, man. 22 targets, 16 receptions, 38 fantasy points. When I do my rest of season rankings, I think I do those tomorrow or Wednesday. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to have him. He might be back to wide receiver 1. I might give CeeDee Lamb the edge at wide receiver 1 just because it's Dak Prescott versus Joe Flacco. But if you do have Jamar Chase, you're back, baby. He's had 3 straight awesome games. He might be the wide receiver 1 for my rest of season. And then T. Higgins, man, that was a really good game from T. Higgins too. 9 targets, 6 catches, 21.5 fantasy points. You're happy. And I think at this point, with Joe Flacco, we know they're going to keep on slinging it and have the ability to make big plays and accurate throws. I think that's the other big thing. But for now, T. Higgins, this is pretty much the Cowboys, man. You got Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Dak Prescott, or George Pickens. you kind of just got to leave these guys in your lineup so you don't miss these big games. And Jesse is liking, we got the Buffalo Trace crew neck on with the St. Andrews golf hat here. I got yours right here, man. So we'll have to figure out a way to get this to you. But more on the Bengals here. Iosivas remains the wide receiver 3. And then the big development here is they lost Mike Gesicki last week, but Noah Fant is back. 37 routes out of 49 routes, 4 targets, 4 catches, 14.5 fantasy points. I think he caught one of the touchdowns. He might be a guy going forward that you could add. If you miss out on some of the hot waiver wire, and there's a handful of tight ends on the waiver wire this week. If you miss out on these guys, Noah Fant might be the sneaky one here because they're going to let him run a lot of routes. And again, he's kind of that number 3, number 4 target in this offense. So nice to see some life back in Cincinnati's offense. Very good news. Oh my goodness, Rams. I don't know what we learned here. No Puka Nacua, no problem. We saw Devontae Adams catch 3 touchdowns, 8 targets. Jordan Whittington, though, I guess this is the thing to keep an eye on here. If Puka or Adams were to miss time, it does look like Jordan Whittington would be the guy that intrigues me the most. I know Konata Mumfield caught a touchdown. Xavier Smith caught a couple passes, but I usually trust the data with the snaps and the routes. So I will say Jordan Whittington steps in as the number 1, number 2 receiver if one of those guys misses. The Jags just didn't really give them much of a fight. Kieran Williams, despite a lopsided blowout here, he only gets 8.5 fantasy points. Both him and Corum get 12 rushing attempts. So I guess the good news is he got out with a light body of work, and he's going to be nice and fresh for next week. I think they're on bye next week. So when they come back, he's going to be like having 2 weeks off. So good news for Kieran there. And then Stafford just continues to look like a vintage Matthew Stafford, just throwing the ball with precision, accuracy. I like the way he's moving around, and they're just having fun right now. So the Rams are a team that we like right now. The tight end room is just a giant mess. Davis Allen, Ferguson, Parkinson, Higbee, all these guys are going to eat into each other and basically make each other useless for fantasy. So this offense remains Puka, Devontae, and Kieran. You can still hold on to Corum. And then, keep in mind, Jordan Whittington might be someone that we need to call up at some point. And then the Jags. I'm not sure what to make of this game. It was one of those games where nothing went right from the start. Just so many penalties. They lead the league in penalties. They lead the league in drops. This is not a clean operation right now. They need to clean a lot of things up over this bye week. But I think the good news is they have their bye week. I expect things to get cleaned up, and they get the Raiders off the bye week. So I was looking at their second half of the schedule, and I think better days are ahead. But how about Travis Hunter, man? Finally, I mean, he ran 51 out of 57 routes, 12 targets, 8 catches, 24 fantasy points. This might just be, scratching the surface here with some useful Travis Hunter games in the second half of the season. And that's kind of what we see with a lot of rookie receivers is it takes them time to develop and get going. And I know with Hunter specifically, I was watching or reading something that said he didn't even really know. He wasn't really involved in the offense in Colorado as far as game planning and things. They would just kind of tell him what to do. So he's still learning the position, guys. And I think it's very clear he's made some big time catches throughout the year, but we finally saw some big moments from him all in one game on Sunday morning. So that's the big one here. Brian Thomas Jr. did get hurt. He did have a bad drop, and he had a lot of contested catches that he almost came down with. So it could have been a bigger day. We're going to watch that shoulder injury. And then Parker Washington with the 10 targets, 4 catches. He did draw a couple pass interference calls and things like that, but everyone just kind of had a weird dropsy day throughout the receivers and the tight ends, and just they could move the ball. They just could not finish in the end zone. And that's ultimately what the issue was. Travis Etienne remains the lead back, but just not a lot of production. And when you're down 21-0 in the blink of an eye, you have to throw the ball as many times as they did. So I'm going to take a deep breath here on my Jags. They get the Raiders out of the bye. And then they still got the Titans twice. I think I saw the Cardinals on there. There's some better days ahead for this team. They still have to play the Colts twice and the Broncos and the Chargers. So we'll see. But I think we're going to see some adjustments during the bye week. More Travis Hunter, please. New Orleans Saints, Chicago Bears. The Saints fought back in this one pretty admirably. We did lose Kendre Miller, though. He tore his ACL on his first touch of the game. that allowed Devin Neal to step in. And it was kind of the Alvin Kamara show, but this is not really a good sign here. 11 carries, 3 receptions, only 6 fantasy points. I mean, he was out there for pretty much all the plays. And at some point, they were kind of even running plays without a running back out there. So it was a weird stat line for Kamara, for him to be really the only guy getting touches and just no fantasy points to come through. But they were losing. They had to throw the ball a lot. Chris Olave was the winner, 5 catches, 2 touchdowns, 27 fantasy points. Rashid Shaheed is still doing his thing where he's getting big long time targets and a lot of short area targets. And he's finally got a high floor of 8 to 10 fantasy points, which feels pretty good. And you know that some of those touchdowns are going to roll his way. So keep plugging in Rashid Shaheed if you have him in your flex. I like him. Cooks, Vele, Tipton, those guys are not really anyone we're looking at. Juwan Johnson, though, I was like, look at the routes here. I mean, Moreau healthy, Jack Stoll, and Taysom Hill, but you still have Juwan Johnson running 31 out of 38 routes. So I think he might be back as the lead tight end here. And again, with the 6-team bye week here in week 8, Juwan, you could probably plug in Juwan Johnson if someone cut him over the last week or two. He did have 5 catches for 13 fantasy points. So I like Juwan. He's kind of coming back into our good graces. Taysom Hill, if you guys want to, mess around and find out, he's getting rushing attempts. He's doing stuff as a potential quarterback. He's getting receptions. You can see what happens there. I just don't know if I trust it all that much. And then Spencer Rattler continues to make enough plays to keep them competitive and hold off Tyler Shuck. But for fantasy, I mean, Chris Olave is in your lineup. I think Rashid Shaheed's in a deeper flex league for you. Consider Juwan Johnson. And then I don't know, man, with Alvin Kamara, he's kind of in that Tony Pollard tier for me right now, where it's like, yeah, like in theory, we have a guy that should be a running back 2 on volume and touches, but he's just not producing enough. So he's more of a fringe running back 2, running back 3 flex for me. Rattler maybe in super flex league. So didn't really learn a lot in this game here, but Saints continue to put up a fight. They're going to get Tampa Bay next week. Alrighty, Chicago Bears. Not a great day from Caleb Williams in the passing offense. Actually, it was really, really bad. He was one of the worst rated passers of week 7. This was all about the running game. They had 32 rushing attempts between DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. Even Roschon Johnson got in on this one and got his first carry of the year. But it was DeAndre Swift, 19 carries, 21 fantasy points. Kyle Monangai, though, he is the one that you're probably going to want to snag on your waivers this week if you just like adding running backs. That could be a thing. He had 13 carries. He was doing a lot of third down work too. He also had a touchdown in this one. And I don't know, Ben Johnson, the Lions, they did a lot of 2-back stuff. Maybe this is the beginning of something that we continue to see more of going forward here. Swift and Monangai, a really poor version of Gibbs and Montgomery, but there's signs are there that they want to be more of a running team than what they've shown this year. Odunze and DJ Moore remain the top 2 receivers here. They just didn't have to do much. There's only 23 targets on the day, and the ball was spread out pretty evenly amongst the group here. Zacchaeus had a couple catches. Burden had a big catch. The injury to watch here is going to be Cole Kmet. I think it was a back injury. So we see Colston Loveland, who returned from his injury. He led the team for tight end snaps and routes. He had 4 targets on the day, 3 catches. If Cole Kmet's missing practice Wednesday, Thursday, maybe we're looking at a little Colston Loveland action as your tight end. And maybe this is what finally pushes him to take over the spot. So we learned a good amount here. Monangai looks fun. Keep an eye on Loveland. Odunze and DJ Moore, keep plugging away at these guys. There'll be better days ahead. And Caleb Williams, I think he's just like a really solid super flex QB2 for the moment right now. Holy smokes, Miami Dolphins. This is, I don't know if it can get worse. We're going to find out pretty soon here. I think the Falcons get them next. This was just the bottoming out here for the Miami Dolphins. This might be maybe one more game left for Tua, maybe one more game for Mike McDonald. Jesse saying if Jalen Waddle gets traded, which would be pretty wild. Darren Waller left this game with a pec injury. He didn't even get a target or a catch in this game. I mean, poor Devon Achane. He's just taking a lot of body blows for this dog shit team right now. I think there's legit potential for Achane to get potentially shut down at some point if he ever has anything that pops up. So we might be talking about Ollie Gordon, Jalen Wright, Might be talking about Quinn Ewers at some point for Superflex leagues. We might be talking Malik Washington, 10 targets a game. We might be talking Nick Westbrook, Akine touchdowns again. So I think there's a lot to learn from this team here. I'm not sure on the severity of the Darren Waller injury. They're saying week to week, so I'm assuming he's not playing this week. But I think for right now, man, if you have a Miami Dolphin, you're going to keep starting Achane. We're not even messing with Tua and Superflex this week. Waddle is a tough one because the last couple games he did look good without Tyreek Hill. This one was just not happening, though. So he's going to be more of a flex consideration for me. I'm sure I'll get a lot of questions on Waddle, but right now the Dolphins' water is not fun swimming waters right now. So tread carefully with your Dolphins. Consider Malik Washington. Consider stashing some of these bench guys. We might see some turnover at some point here in Miami as they look for a new, I don't know, man, new head coach, new quarterback, new everything potentially coming in Miami. And I'm not quite sure where I want to see Jalen Waddle play. I mean, I think Jalen Waddle would look really sweet with Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. That's one of the first teams that come to mind. I mean, I'd have to sit and think a few things about a few teams here, but Waddle, they did pay him a good amount of money, but I think that's a really tradable contract still. Cleveland Browns, I don't really have much that I learned here. Quinshon Judkins is just a tank, 25 carries, 3 touchdowns in this one, 26 and a half fantasy points. Gabriel is just doing his job, bumper bowling and hitting his short and intermediate routes. Harold Fandon Jr. led the day with targets and receptions. And as long as Njoku is going to stay out, I think you can keep plugging in Harold Fandon, who I think he's top 5 in targets at the tight end position. So he's like the one guy outside of Judkins that I'm open to in my starting lineup. Jerry Jeudy, I'm not going to trust any receiving option here. And I'm probably just okay staying away from Cleveland in my fantasy team. Unless your name is Judkins, we'll see what happens with Njoku when he comes back. And that would be kind of, I mean, if Brian Dable goes and trades for Jalen Waddle, perhaps we see some more excitement from the Giants offense. When can I dump Njoku? Njoku now, I think he is one of the guys that has a really good chance at being traded. Here is my dream. So I have a couple dreams. I want Tampa Bay to get a tight end, whether that's at the trade deadline this season or in the offseason next season. And I have 2 ideas for you. Tampa Bay, if they're going to make a move this season for tight end, they go get David Njoku. Tampa Bay, if they wait for the offseason to get a tight end, they go get Baker's buddy Mark Andrews on that team next year. So I think Tampa Bay is a tight end away from being an elite offense. Cade Otton is, he's just a vanilla tight end, but I think that could be a sweet spot. But keep an eye on Njoku, man. I think the Browns are fine selling assets. They're probably one of the most likely teams to make a trade. And I think David Njoku, I don't know if I think he's due up for a contract year next year. So Njoku could be a really sweet piece for somebody. I just don't know where he's going to go. That would be like the perfect landing spot for him to be really good for fantasy. But I think hold on to him. I think I saw he was practicing, but I could be wrong, or on track to practice this week, but we'll find out. Raiders, this is another team, that I don't really want to be messing with for fantasy right now. This could get uglier. I think Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, these guys are probably not coming back next year. What players are on this team that are going to be playing for these guys next year? You got Genty and Brock Bowers as pieces next year, but Jacoby Myers, he's a trade deadline guy. I think Trey Tucker is fine as your outlier receiver that can just run a lot of routes. And he's actually looked okay this year. He's kind of like in that Rashid Shaheed mold right now, where he might be one of those guys that are worth throwing in as your flex. They're going to be on bye week 8. They're saying they're going to get Jacoby and Brock Bowers back. But going into week 9 against Jacksonville, no, we're not using Geno Smith. You're going to keep plugging away Genty because he's going to continue to get the volume. And I think you play the volume. But otherwise, Jacoby Myers doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. You're going to play Brock Bowers if you have him. That's about it. But not really feeling too good about the Raiders. We're going to have to see some trades here. I mean, if they're willing to take on Jalen Waddle here, that'd be a pretty sweet spot for a rookie quarterback to come in next year. You got Genty, Waddle, and they got two good tight ends in Mayer and Brock Bowers. That could be kind of fun. So if they want to maybe make a move for next year, now would be the time to maybe get some assets and just plug in a 80 catch receiver per year. That could be fun. But the Raiders, man, that was quite pathetic yesterday. I think they had under 100 total yards. And I don't even know what to say about the Chiefs, man. This was just one of those games where Mahomes, he was efficient. He dinked and dunked a lot to Juju and to Rashi and to Kelsey. And a lot of times these guys were just wide open. This was target practice for Mahomes and company. They shut him down after 3 quarters. So I don't really know if we learned too much. The one thing that I did learn, though, Kareem Hunt got banged up early in this one. I thought Brashard Smith looked pretty nice. And he made most of his damage with his 5 catches for full PPR purposes. But the fact that they were willing to let him get going in the running game, when the game got out of hand, that's a good sign that maybe we're going to start to see more of him. And Pacheco is still running pretty hot. He's still playing pretty well. So I don't think you're ever going to get, unless there's an injury here and this 3-way backfield gets consolidated to 2 guys, we'll be more excited about it. But I do think Brashard Smith's one of those guys I want on my bench right now. You're attaching yourselves to the hottest offense in football right now. He's a pass catching back. This is what you're looking for on the waiver wire right here, Brashard Smith. Xavier Worthy, bigger days are going to come for him. Rashee Rice just caught all these little small passes and ended up catching 2 touchdowns. So good to see him return and stay healthy. We don't really care about Juju, Hollywood Brown, Tyquan Thornton. If you want to play roulette and start, Hollywood Brown in a game, I think that's fine. But otherwise, I'm probably not looking here. And then Travis Kelce continues to look fine. Not a high volume guy anymore without, with Rice and Worthy being back. But you're going to keep playing Kelce if you got him. So didn't really learn anything about the Chiefs. Just that it's lining up for them. They're fully healthy. They've mustered back to 4-3, and they kind of are in control right now. I think even though they're behind the Broncos in the AFC West, like they might be the team to beat in the AFC. All right, Eagles. We never really learned anything about the Eagles. The one thing that we are learning right now, though, is Saquon Barkley just is not playing all that well. 18 carries, 5.1 fantasy points in this one. He did have a nice run or two that I saw yesterday, but he's not really consistently getting those big chunk gains. They're definitely not throwing the ball a ton to the running backs in general. But I'm a little bit nervous. Like the Eagles probably could use a bye week and get Saquon regenerated up a little bit. This was all the passing game. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith got everything in this one. They combined for 13 catches and almost 60 fantasy points as receivers. Huge day from these guys here, and against a good defense in Minnesota. Like we expect them to be a much better defense than what they showed in that game. But it definitely good signs here for Jalen Hurts in the passing game. The fact that Barkley can be ineffective and they're going to find a different way to get the job done. That makes them a threat every week here. So we didn't learn anything about the Eagles. It's the same guys, Hurts, Barkley, the receivers in Dallas Goedert continues to play as a top 5 tight end. He'll have bigger days going forward. So didn't learn anything. We got to see Tank Bigsby get the ball a little bit, though. I think if Saquon Barkley were to miss time, we're going to look at an ugly committee here. And I don't really know how we're going to split that up. But just keep an eye on the Shipley-Bigsby duo for next week to see if anyone's getting more than the other. The Minnesota Vikings, Jordan Addison looks really good. And a lot of that is, the help of Justin Jefferson being across from you. And all of a sudden you get a lot of nice coverages your way. But Addison was the best player on the field for the Vikings yesterday. I thought Jordan Mason ran the ball well, and it took them a while. Kevin O'Connell's been annoying me lately with a lot of these play calls here because Mason, when they run the ball with Mason and they keep kind of feeding him, that's when everything else kind of opens up. And that's when they started giving Mason the ball. That's how they kind of clawed back into this one. But the first quarter and a half or two, they were letting Wentz just kind of chuck it and do a lot of dumb stuff. And then they finally kind of got more balanced, and that opened up the passing game, and everything was kind of cohesive after that. So we'll see probably Wentz on Thursday night, not JJ McCarthy. I think that's smart. Let JJ heal up one more week, and then the Vikings have a pretty nice schedule the rest of the way. But what did we learn here? You're starting Hawkinson, Addison, and Jefferson. keep starting Jordan Mason. Wentz will be quarterback 2 super flex option for you on Thursday Night Football. And then we might see Aaron Jones on Thursday night. I'm not sure. I think it might make sense to hold him out for one more week and get him back for week number 9. But we'll see if Aaron Jones does play. I'm probably not going to play him in fantasy. I want to see him kind of get through a game healthy and see what his workload looks like. So keep starting Jordan Mason, and we'll see if maybe these Xavier Scott numbers are similar to Aaron Jones numbers his first game back, where, gets a few carries, a catch or two, that kind of thing. But I think Jordan Mason still the lead back for the Vikings. Carolina, another win here. I think they're on a 3-game win streak right now. Bryce Young playing good football, taking care of the football. He did leave with a high ankle sprain. I don't think he's going to play in week 8. But this running back field, that's the one thing that we were really wanting to learn here. Chuba Hubbard, 38 snaps. Rico Dowdle, 33 snaps. We see 17 routes for Chuba, 9 for Rico. So it's still, even in his first game back, it's a slight edge to Chuba Hubbard here and a big edge in the routes game. But the rushing attempts were Rico 17, Chuba 14. And as the game got on, I think the first quarter, Chuba was pretty much the lead back. And then it took, Rico first carry was like 14 yards. And then he just kind of keeps doing his Rico thing. And by the end of the game, Rico was the closeout back and got more carries. So I still think Rico is the better back. He's the guy that if I had to start one of these guys in my running back 2 spot every week, I'm going to probably keep playing Rico. And with Andy Dalton for week 8, I don't know. Maybe that's maybe that's one of those Joe Flacco effects where even if it's only one game or two, Andy Dalton kind of puts some new pizzazz on this offense. And Rico had a nice catch in this game as well. So we want to see Rico eventually hop Chuba Hubbard here, but still a lot to learn here. It's kind of a moving target. But for now, I mean, these guys both got no touchdowns in this game for the running backs, but they combined for almost 18 fantasy points. So, if you need a running back that gets you 8 to 10 points, play Chuba, play Rico, see what happens for now. The big news here, though, was the receiver Xavier Legette, 33 routes on 36 dropbacks, team high 10 targets, 9 catches, 24.2 fantasy points. Whoa. I had personally kind of written off Xavier Legette. Earlier in the year, he got hurt. He came back and he just wasn't looking all that good. But this was a really big moment for him. This was his best game of his career so far through 2 years. So we'll see if he can keep building off of this. I found it very interesting. 10 targets, 9 catches. This could be just a random phantom event, or if there's going to be some traction here. Now we get Andy Dalton, who's not afraid to just sling it. Maybe we see some traction here and Legette becomes someone that we're interested in. McMillan, you're going to keep plugging him in. Legette becomes a wide receiver 3 flex this weekend. And then keep an eye on Jalen Coker. It was his first game back. He came in and was number 3 in terms of snaps and routes, only earned 2 targets. But this was not really a super competitive game. The Panthers had to run the ball 30 plus times with their running backs, 27 targets on the day for the team. They did spread the ball out to this mess of tight ends. So keep an eye on Coker. He might be a guy that gets more work next week. Don't really care about the tight ends. Holy smokes. The goddamn Jets. They are the worst team in football right now on offense. They played without Garrett Wilson in this one, and that I think was that was what led to the bottoming out of this team here, because Josh Reynolds, Arian Smith, Allen Lazard, Tyler Johnson, these guys are barely rosterable on an NFL roster in today's NFL. So even if it's Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, setting these quarterbacks up for success, you really can't do it with this group of playmakers. So frustrating day there from both quarterbacks. Breece Hall, 11 carries, 2 catches, 7.2 fantasy points. That's kind of a floor game for him. But we do have to worry, man. What are the Jets going to do at quarterback? Is there any move that they can make at the trade deadline here to get better? I don't think they're going to trade for a QB. They're probably comfortable eating it with the guys they got. But, man, I want to see them upgrade the wide receiver position. Even just Garrett Wilson healthy back is the number 1. you still have this ugly list of guys playing for number 2, number 3 snaps here. So they need to figure out something at this receiver position. Mason Taylor, though, continues to look good. He didn't have a huge box score day, but 38 routes out of 45. He is the clear number 1 tight end. So, if there is any kind of positive developments here, it would be Mason Taylor. Maybe with a healthy Wilson, Taylor could be that guy that you lean on as your number 2 target, but they for sure could use a guy like Jalen Waddle. I think maybe a guy like Jacoby Brissett would fit in well here too. If they want to just add a guy that can play slot for them. It's everything, man. I don't even know if I can name a Jets. They lost Vera Tucker, I think, in August this year. He would have been the only offensive lineman I could name on this team, but it's also surprising how bad the defense is too. That was supposed to be, a top 5, top 10 unit. And this team is inexperienced. This team is undisciplined, and it's, for every positive play, they're going to make one penalty or a negative play here and just kind of negate everything. So the only winless team left in the NFL, I don't know, man. We could see this team could trade Breece Hall. I don't know where Breece Hall would go that I would be like, hell yeah, we got a much better situation, in terms of opportunities. But Breece Hall trade is definitely on the table. Just a lot to figure out here in New York, and I don't feel good starting. I mean, Jesse's got Justin Fields, man. I don't even know if you can start Justin Fields in Superflex next week. With the potential to get benched again. I mean, if he throws an interception, what's that leash look like? I do think if he has Garrett Wilson out there, I'd feel a little bit better about things. But the Jets are just, this is worst team in football right now. Jets versus Raiders. I don't know who wins that game, but I'd probably watch it though. The Patriots. This is the most confusing team to me. They have a lot of ugly wins. 4 of their wins are like against Tennessee, the Jets, the Saints, and another knucklehead team in there. They lost to the Raiders week 1. They beat the Bills in a big game. I don't know what this team is, but man, like Ramondre Stevenson, Balco, this is a huge development here. They lose Antonio Gibson a week or 2 ago, and you're thinking, here we go. We get Travion Henderson, more opportunities, snaps, routes, touches, everything. And then we get the absolute worst utilization from Henderson of the year so far. 9 snaps. Stevenson gets 18 carries. Henderson gets 2. Terrell Jennings is running this game out at the end of the game. Why aren't we trying to get Travion some more action and more comfortable in the offense here with the starters? I don't know. Right now we have an unusable bench piece in Henderson. Stevenson could still fumble and have his issues right now, but he looked really good. And again, it's against the Titans. They ran a lot of too high safety stuff, and Stevenson was just moving the ball around nicely. So you might have a strong running back 2 here for the foreseeable future with Stevenson. Drake May is just he might be really good. The fact that he's doing this with Kayshon Boutte, Mac Hollins, the ghost of Stephon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, and Austin Hooper, like, can we get him Jalen Waddle? Like that I think would be cool. Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs just unleashed out there. That could be a really fun opportunity here. So I'm not quite sure what to think of this team. I think Stephon Diggs continues to be like a solid wide receiver 2 flex. I don't really want to mess with Kayshon Boutte and Mac Hollins, but these guys make touchdown plays. They also have days where they can get you 1 or 2 fantasy points or a 0. So I don't really like playing with that fire. So start your Diggs, start your May, start your Stevenson. Henry remains serviceable as a low-end tight end 1, but I think just the juice on the waiver wire this week, I might be pushing him down to tight end 2 numbers. So Patriots, I want to learn more against better opponents here, but it is looking like they're going to make the playoffs this year. They have a pretty nice schedule. The Titans. I mean, Chimere Dike, name to look at here, 17 fantasy points, 4 catches, and a rushing attempt. He also makes a lot of fun plays as a punt returner. So if you guys get return yards in your league, That's something to look at. Tony Pollard, after week 6, we saw Tajay Spears play more than Pollard. This week it kind of swings back to Pollard. 6 rushing attempts, 6 targets. Spears, 5 rushing attempts, 4 targets. I mean, these guys are just in that weird abyss of 6 to 12 fantasy points per game unless they get a touchdown. So we'll see what happens there. You can still start Pollard, but again, low-end RB2 flex. Tajay Spears, I do think as the season goes on, maybe Tony Pollard gets traded. Maybe Tajay Spears, they're going to see what he can do. So maybe we can learn something from this backfield at some point. I think Alec Ayomaner, at this point, he's fine on the bench, but are you ever going to feel good starting him? Probably not. Van Jefferson's making plays, but who cares? I don't know, man. We don't know what's going on with Calvin Ridley either. That ankle injury or whatever he's got. I don't think you want to start any Titans on your team right now. I will say Gunnar Helm continues to look good, and he might be a guy that, hey, if he's out there in your dynasty league, like pick up Gunnar Helm. He's been getting more work lately here. He might be hopping Chigo Okonkwo at some point this season. Titans are pretty fugly, though. They're playing some bad football. New York Giants, what did we learn here? Another game for Wan'Dale Robinson, 10 targets, 6 receptions. He is a wide receiver 3 flex in PPR leagues right now, and he's making like deeper plays down the field. He's not just your 4 or 5 yard per catch guy right now. He's actually making some big time catches. He made that huge catch at the end of the game on 4th down there to move the chains as well. So Wan'Dale is in your lineup. And then you see little Jordan Humphrey here against the Eagles. I think he led the team in targets. This game, he runs the most snaps and the routes, only 1 target here. That's Darius Slayton's spot. So if Darius Slayton's back in week number 8, he should probably be picked up. I think he could be an interesting guy. Jesse's been calling for Jalen Waddle here, which could be kind of fun. Just the future of a Malik Neighbors, Jalen Waddle, Wan'Dale Robinson, and then the tight ends. That was, I think, if I learned anything in this game, Jackson Dart's going to throw to the tight ends. Only Wan'Dale Robinson as a receiver caught the ball. Both tight ends, Theo Johnson and Daniel Bellinger, catch a touchdown and 3 catches each. Big plays in this game, too, from these guys here. I think Theo Johnson at this point, he's a full-time starter. 35 out of 36 routes. He's one of those hot waiver wire tight ends. Like, I'd rather start Theo Johnson than Hunter Henry at this point. Year 2 guy here. He's the kind of waiver wire tight end that could be really fun down the stretch here because he's going to continue to be the number 2, number 3 targeted player in this offense. So we like Theo. Daniel Bellinger's fine. That might have just been, a random event here for him, but the prize would be Theo. And then not a huge deal for Cam Scatterbo, but a healthy Tyrone Tracy is still a playmaker. He had 9 carries in this game. He got a rushing touchdown from, I think, about 31 yards out. He looked good out there. So he's going to take a little bit off the top of Cam Scatterbo, but Scatterbo is still going to lead the team in carries. I think the targets and the receptions were nice for Cam this week. He finally got a receiving touchdown. But just note that Tyrone Tracy is there. He's going to steal some opportunities. Maybe not goal line work, but definitely a handful of carries and maybe some receptions at some point. And if Tracy's out there in your waivers, he's worth putting on your bench. We know the violent nature that Cam Scatterbo plays with. And then Jackson Dart, just keep playing. If he's your QB1, you're fine. Super flex leagues, that looks fantastic. But for now, Giants are a fun team. They got to learn to win. That's the next step, is learning to win and holding on to those big games, especially on the road. I don't know what to say about the Broncos, man. Like, this is that was an impressive game from Bo Nix. 40 fantasy points. I hate the running back rotation. It's got to be 3 dudes, 3 running backs here. Why can't it just be 2? Because there's enough. If there's only 2 guys getting snaps at running back, at least meaningful snaps, there's enough to be careful for fantasy. Dobbins leads the way with snaps. They're going to run. RJ Harvey actually did run a lot of routes in this one, which was nice. He had 3 rushing attempts, 3 targets. So maybe there's something happening here where he takes over some more of this Tyler Beatty work, which at this point, Beatty's just out there eating routes and a couple targets per game. If we can lower his stuff and kind of siphon that to Harvey or Dobbins, we're going to like those 2 guys. But for now, Dobbins, he's kind of in that RB2 mix for now. Harvey's close. He's still a guy that I want on my bench. If someone dropped him over the last game or two, pick him up, put him on your bench. We know he's a talented player, and just the season's long. It takes a long time sometimes for rookies to finally get rolling. And, he got the touchdown yesterday. Better days could be ahead for Harvey. And he's only one J.K. Dobbins injury away from being the guy. So keep an eye on Harvey. The receivers here, good game from a lot of these guys. Cortland Sutton leads the way with 6 catches, made a big play at the end of the game. Troy Franklin, team high 10 targets, only 3 catches, but he did catch a touchdown. He also caught a 2-point conversion. I think he's fine as like a deep, wide receiver 3 flex if you need somebody. Marvin Mims was the guy making the big plays down the field, though. He ended up with 16 fantasy points. Not really someone that I want to trust in my starting lineup, but I'm open to having him on my bench and kind of continuing to see what happens here. Pat Bryant, good to see him continuing to get more snaps and routes and finally making a catch. But otherwise, it was Evan Ingram, who been kind of unhealthy so far to start the year. 37 routes out of 56, but 7 targets, 5 catches. He made a couple big plays at the end of the game. If you need somebody, he's a starting fringe tight end 1, maybe, especially with this big bye week coming up. I still don't love the rotation here. They're letting 3 tight ends run a decent amount of routes and kind of spreading targets around here in Denver. So he's not a must-start tight end, but if he's out there in your waiver wire and you missed on Gadsden or Theo or some of the other guys, he's interesting at least. We didn't really learn anything from the Colts besides that they're good. Like, they are the most efficient offense right now. They're playing fantastic football in all 3 phases. And Jonathan Taylor is your fantasy MVP, I think, right now. I know Bijan and CMC maybe made a case for it last night, but Jonathan Taylor is rock solid. And the thing that I like about Taylor this year that we haven't seen from him in the past is he's running all the routes, 32 out of 37 routes. Like, this is finally happening for him to be the running back 1 on the season. So he looks fantastic. Daniel Jones looks fantastic. I will say Alec Pierce looks fantastic in this one. He might be a guy that you could pick up off the waiver wire and say, hey, it's a big bye week this week. I'm going to throw out Alec Pierce and hope for that 40-yard touchdown or whatever and hope for some fantasy points. So he's a guy that I think could be entering our circle of trust. Pittman's definitely in our circle of trust without Josh Downs this week. They tried the AD Mitchell thing a couple of weeks ago and he cost them the game. Anthony Gold gets a spot here. I think Downs will be back next week. And then Tyler Warren, man, pretty dang good. Keep firing away in your starting lineup here. I just got an update here. Tyler Lockett has asked for his release from the Tennessee Titans. He wants out. All right, LA Chargers, what did we learn here? Keenan Allen, still got it, dude. Keenan Allen, 14 targets, 11 catches, almost 29 fantasy points, and he was just off a couple big more plays. Like, they were routinely hooking up almost every drive. He was making a catch or 2 per drive here. And McConkey, 13 targets, 9 receptions. These 2 were pretty much just making plays left and right. Now, I think one of the good friends of the show, Justin's like, what happened to Quentin Johnston today? He was out there for pretty much all the snaps and the routes, but why was the ball going to Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen so much and not QJ? QJ did have, I remember one for sure. It might have been another big play, but there was a DPI drawn. There's a couple other plays that almost coulda, woulda, shoulda. He could have had a much bigger day. He still caught a touchdown, got you 11 fantasy points. If this is a bad game where he didn't make a lot of plays, I think you're going to be okay. But I think the issue with this is the Chargers' offensive line. They had guys leaving the game, coming back in all day, just giving up huge pressures to the Colts defenders. And Herbert, the fact that he threw for 420 with this offensive line play, better days are ahead. The Chargers are in need of a bye week to get this team healthy. But for now, I think Quentin Johnston, more of a downfield guy. You're looking at the short quickness of McConkey and Keenan Allen, get the ball out quick with this offensive line. So maybe that's why we saw a quiet day from QJ. Nice to see Trey Harris make some plays. He had a 4th down catch that looked pretty nice. He had another catch there too. So just something to keep an eye on. If anybody misses time, it does look like Trey Harris would be the next man up. And then let's talk about Oronde Gadsden. He's a guy that, I think he had a handful of plays that he made last week. And had I been in the swing of my show, I probably would have highlighted him last week on a waiver wire target column. So we would have added him already. And I did add him actually in the Dynasty League. I did add him a few weeks back. But this is like, I don't think this is fool's gold. This is a guy that they have talked up routinely throughout August, and they're continuing to find ways to get him out there more. And it took a Will Dissly injury for Gadsden to get on the field at first. And then Dissly came back in this game. He was out. Dissly runs one route, gets one target, hits him right in the freaking hands. And then he doesn't run another route for the rest of the game. This was the Oronde Gadsden breakout game. We might look back at this week 7 and say, hey, like, why didn't I add this guy? He caught 5 passes per game for the rest of the year. He averaged 12 fantasy points per game, something like that. He's a field stretcher. He's fast. He's a mismatch for most linebackers in this league. Unless you're like an elite all-pro linebacker, there's a good chance Gadsden's going to find you, run around you, and Herbert can put the ball on him, especially in the middle of the field up the seams. So Gadsden might be a really fun waiver wire piece this week. The run game was ineffective just because the game was so out of hand and the offensive line was playing so bad. But if you want to play Kamani Vidal against the Vikings, I think that's fine. Keep playing Herbert, QJ, McConkey, Keenan Allen. And I think this is Gadsden's job now. I think he's not going away. So I'm pretty excited about the kid. Packers, what did we learn here? We didn't really learn a lot. This is just what they do. Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, Dobbs and Golden, and Tucker Kraft. Like that's kind of the offense. It's very Philadelphia-esque, Dontavian Wicks, I think, got hurt in this one. We saw a little bit more Malik Heath. We'll see what happens when Christian Watson comes back. But I do think a good win for Matthew Golden. Like, he is entrenched right now as the number 2, number 3 target in this offense. Romeo Dobbs and Tucker Kraft are still getting a lot more of the routine plays. Golden's plays are they seem more schemed up and more like LaFleur's got to make an effort to get him the ball. And we saw 3 golden catches on the first drive of the game. And I'm like, oh my God, we might be onto something today. And then only 1 more catch the rest of the game. So I think there's going to be better days ahead for Matthew Golden. He still hasn't scored a touchdown. And I think this is a really nice week here in week 8. Again, 6 teams on bye. I'm trying to start Matthew Golden in fantasy this week, especially with all the buys and a big game against Pittsburgh. I think Matthew Golden deserves a spot here. But you're playing Dobbs, you're playing Kraft, Josh Jacobs, Jordan Love. These guys all kind of did their part. It took a while for the offense to get going, but they finally managed to put together a decent second half and get enough points to win this game. And Love was pretty clutch at the end. So nice fourth quarter win for the Packers. Arizona Cardinals, what did we learn here? I thought Jacoby Brissett looked pretty good. He's like a game manager plus. Like, he is like the ultimate, he's the guy in the commercial where you need a backup in whatever commercial that is. And Jacoby Brissett's like the ideal backup where you can kind of come in and trust what you're going to get. He's going to be a smart player, make good plays, can be mobile if you need him. And he was fighting Trey McBride all day long. So big game for McBride. I thought Marvin Harrison Jr. played a lot better than the box score. He was drawing big plays, a couple close misses. He had a couple DPIs that he drew. He had the 2 big catches, but he played a lot better than his 7.7 fantasy points suggest. We'll see if Kyler Murray can play. They're going to be on bye this week, I believe, week 8 here. So I'm expecting Murray to be back for week 9. I kind of like the offense more with Jacoby Brissett, but I could be wrong. Bam Knight remains the RB1, 14 carries in this one. He was kind of in and out, had a concussion, got checked out for concussion, came back in, that kind of stuff. Not super excited about these backs, but if I had to start one in week 9, it's probably Bam Knight. Hold on. You can hold on to Michael Carter if you need to through the bye week, but we might be okay with letting Carter go if you need to make any moves this week. Washington Commanders. It's hard to learn anything in this game. Jaden Daniels gets hurt. Marcus Mariota comes back. No Debo, no Terry. Zach Ertz leads the day with targets. Robbie Chosen makes some catches. This is kind of a throwaway game for me. So I didn't really learn anything. Krosky Merritt looked fine. 13 rushing attempts, only 4 fantasy points. Jeremy McNichols still getting targets and carries. And Chris Rodriguez, of course, gets the goal line plunge in this one here. So I'm kind of willing to scrap this and just forget about this game. Chris Moore, Jalen Lane making plays. So we'll find out more if Jaden Daniels can play in this one. Otherwise, it might be an ugly game here against Kansas City. I think it's Sunday Night Football, but I could be wrong. Cowboys get CeeDee Lamb back. Everybody does their part. Dak Prescott, 23 fantasy points. Javonte Williams making big plays in the running game. Finally, not just like big, touchdowns, but explosive plays, big gains, that kind of stuff. Javonte looks great. Jaden Blue looked good on his limited touches too. George Pickens made some big time catches. CeeDee Lamb, of course, with the big touchdown, 70 plus yards. Who cares about the other receivers right now? And then Hank Ferguson, all he does is catch touchdowns. He's going to rack up a lot of garbage targets and just score touchdowns. So you're starting everybody. All the guys we just talked about deserve to be in your fantasy lineup. This is the Cowboys that we kind of envisioned back in August, where I said I could squint and I could see Dak Prescott just having to throw the ball a ton this season. And we actually kind of factored in the running game not being good. So I think the fact that they're throwing the ball as much as they are and they have a good running game, that's like best case scenario. So Cowboys, and the recipe for the bad defense is just perfect for this fantasy offense. So keep starting your Cowboys. And then we'll finish up here with the Sunday night game, the Falcons. Bijan looked like Bijan. They bottled him up, though, for pretty much most of the game. He made pretty much all of his damage with the receiving work, 6 catches. He caught a touchdown. Running-wise, though, they did not have success running the ball with Bijan or Tyler Allgeier here. So Penix was needing to throw the ball. Didn't really have a great game throwing to Drake London, as good as he did in the Buffalo game. Darnell Mooney made some big plays, though. He might be a waiver wire option for you. And then I thought Kyle Pitts, I actually messed that up. I don't know why that says 62. Oh, man. Kyle Pitts did look pretty good. I think he had 13.2 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts looked pretty good. He was a guy that was kind of the focal point out of the gate. They were getting him going early. He had a 27-yard catch called back. They did a lot of motioning and things like that. And then the Falcons do a lot of this stuff where they'll motion Pitts or one of their bigger receivers like London out wide, and then they'll have Bijan come behind him and catch him, and they have these big blockers. So I kind of like what they're doing here. London, Mooney should be added. Pitts, you should be starting. Obviously, you're starting Bijan. Michael Penix did have a foot thing. I think he's going to be okay. I think it was a bone bruise in his foot. We'll watch for that, but big game for this offense against Miami. You might even want to start Tyler Allgeier with this bipocalypse. And then last but not least, it's Christian McCaffrey. Who cares about the rest? George Kittle gets a goose. McCaffrey was just as good as ever last night. 24 rushing attempts, 7 catches, 39 fantasy points. Just a dominant day from Christian McCaffrey. Juwan Jennings was back, which is good. 7 fantasy points. I think he's startable. We'll see about Ricky Pearsall. There's a lot to learn here, a lot of moving pieces with the Brock Purdy, the Ricky Pearsall injury. Kendrick Bourne's value might be at the bottom here. You can hold on to him if you want, but this looks like it's going to be George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, Christian McCaffrey. 49ers are good. 49ers are a very good team. And then, we got 2 awesome games tonight. 2 very, very good games tonight. We got the battle for best team in the NFC between the Lions and the Buccaneers. And then we got a really scrappy game. I think it's in Seattle. Seattle versus Houston. Seattle's been looking like a pretty good team all year. Houston, they're on a bye last week. They put together a couple wins in a row against some bad teams. We'll see what they're made of on the road here in Seattle. So fun games. Again, I'll be live tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central Time for the Waiver Wire Show. Thank you guys for watching. It's good to be back. I'm happy to be back into my routine and helping you all with the silly game that we play called fantasy football. We're so privileged to care so much about a fake football team. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out with me on this Monday evening. Good luck tonight, guys. I hope you get all the points that you need or the points that you don't need. We'll see. But either way, enjoy the games. We'll see you tomorrow night. Peace.